Welcome to Yin Yoga Lifestyle. I am your host, Colette Darville. Cultivating our body's resilience and inner silence and its application to all aspects of your life. Let's become enlightened and enjoy the power of intuitiveness and creativity. You are listening to Society Bites Radio, social interaction for the mind and soul. Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I am your host, Colette Darville, and this is Yin Yoga Lifestyle. So now let us take a deep meditative breath. Inhale, so. Exhale, hum. Dr. Charles BENS, PhD, is an author, speaker, and wellness consultant specializing in the prevention and reversal of chronic disease. He is the founder and president of Healthy at Work, Inc., a wellness education and consulting company focused on improving the health of employees. The company provides workshops on a wide range of health topics. Dr. BENS has written 9 books and over 300 articles, including Healthy at Work, Your Pocket Guide to Good Health. In today's first podcast of a 3-part series, Dr. BENS will be taking us deeper into the question, is there a silver lining to the COVID-19 virus? Welcome back to Yin Yoga Lifestyle, Dr. BENS.
Thank you, Colette. It's so nice to be here.
I know you've been really busy, and you've been busy writing articles and being published. And you recently wrote an article in this month's August Total Health magazine, where you are proposing a silver lining to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has caused so much fear and anxious uncertainty throughout the world. Okay, so can this silver lining, is it really true?
Well, in my mind, in your mind, it is. We just have to get others to believe it.
I think you're right.
It's there because everybody is paying more attention to their health than they ever have. And they're trying to find out what can they do to be healthier against viruses like this and other things that might be affecting them. And so I think this is an opportunity to bring some issues to the front that have been lingering in the background and pay attention to them and maybe create the silver lining that I mentioned in the article.
Oh, I think that's so true. I think it is. And this article has so many aspects to it. I just think they're all important. Everything that you speak about is important. Because your article discusses, can most people afford to be healthy? So could we take a look at, maybe at the beginning, perhaps with the food? Is that a possibility, to sort of look at the food?
I think it's the best place to start, actually, because a strong immune system is actually the best way for people to defend themselves against the virus and chronic disease. And unfortunately, most people aren't eating as good as they should. And the proof of that came in a study from the National Cancer Institute when they surveyed 16,000 people and found not one person that actually had a healthy diet. Oh. And those were people aged 2 to 80, and they actually were deficient in 11 out of 14 nutritional categories. So I think this belies the issue when people say, well, I eat a pretty good diet. Actually, when they say that, they're not. And so that's the starting point. Most people aren't getting the nutrients they need from the food they're eating.
And I read that you said that the rate of chronic illness is increasing. So could you explain that a little bit to us?
Well, sure. Over the last 60 years, 60 years ago, chronic illness was in about 10% of people. Now it's about 70%.
Wow.
And so that's a 700% increase in the last 60 years. And you can actually correlate that to the deterioration of the quality of food and diet that people are eating. People ate a lot better in the 50s and 60s. And then gradually over many, many years of bad agriculture and over-processing and bad decisions on the part of people, starting with the loss of nutrients, the soil has been degrading over the last 50 or 60 years. So there's actually less minerals and less vitamins in the soil. And so it's a major problem that we're not getting food to start with in the stores that is as healthy as it should be.
Yeah, and that's, and we had, Dr. Benz and I have had multiple conversations, really interesting. He's a fascinating person. Well, you've had 40 years of experience in this field. And we talked about some food and farming and there's also if you're not eating organic, there are pesticides and things that we are aware, but not as aware as much as we should be in the food. So can you talk a little bit maybe about that and the toxins?
Yes, absolutely. You're hitting on a great point, and that is that you can go on the internet and you can see an article about the Dirty Dozen. And the Dirty Dozen will say, these are the 12 foods that are the most toxic in terms of having this sprayed the most times and having those pesticides kind of come into the inside of the fruit and the vegetable. And it's a good thing to start with kind of eliminating those and only eating the organic versions of those foods, like strawberries. But one of the things that we know about toxins is that it may be safe on a particular food, but when you add up all the foods that you're eating, you get an accumulation of toxins. So if you have toxins in the water and you have toxins in the air and you have toxins in the soil, they all show up in the food cycle somewhere. And it's this accumulation of the toxins that's creating the big problem, not the one-off evaluations from this food to that food.
Right. So we're being bombarded from all sides, really, aren't we?
Yes, because it's all about the money that the food industry can make, because they want to make sure that the lifespan of the food is as long as it can be. And so they want to make sure that they use GMO, they use irradiation, they use every technique that they can, including pesticides, to keep the food from spoiling and not being able to be harvested properly. So it starts from the harvesting and goes right through to the processing. And in the end, all those different methodologies of protecting the food from pesticides and from germs and from bacteria and stuff like that, that ends up having accumulated impact on our bodies, and that's where the problem comes from.
And I think that people should be aware that if you have, if you have a bag of apples or something in your fridge and it lasts more than, I don't know, if it still looks good at the 2-month level, then you need to not eat that, right?
Well, the Green Giant says it as well as anyone, and this is a great advertisement for frozen foods, because the Green Giant says, 10% of your nutritional value declines every day that the food is out of the soil. And so this whole thing about eating local and eating your food within a day or two of picking it, that's where the secret is, because if a food's been in your house for 2 or 3 weeks, then you probably have about 10% of the nutritional value left of that food. And people don't really understand that, but that's a fact. And that's why frozen food's so valuable. They freeze that organic food within hours of it being picked, and that freezes in the nutritional value. And so actually frozen foods are a good choice because of that, and the fact that it's less expensive than the fresh organic food.
Yeah, and that gives a lot of options to people who maybe are on a budget and don't have the money to spend on go to the produce aisle and buy organic food, right?
Well, we actually go to the store with classes sometimes in different places that I work, and we take the employees through a little tour of the grocery store. And so they know the golden rule is to eat around the outside, because that's where the fresh stuff is, and the frozen stuff and all the other packaged stuff is inside, except that the frozen aisle is the place where you do want to go.
Right.
Because then you can see the organic foods, and when you compare the unit cost of those organic foods to the unit cost of the fresh foods, it's going to be half sometimes, or even more than half as much. And so that's where you get the real value and the good nutritional part of it too.
And we're also in a place right now where everybody, and there's a lot of people out there who understand that the immune system, because of the COVID, they have to increase and create a strong immune system. And but there's a lot of people out there who are taking prescription drugs, right? So not only may they be getting toxins in their food, but they're taking prescription drugs. Now, can you talk a little bit about the depletion of nutrients in our bodies? Can prescription drugs cause that, and what can we do?
Well, absolutely. That's a great point, because this is something that doctors don't learn in the medical school, at least not the ones that are conventionally trained. The naturopaths and the functional medicine doctors do learn this. And what they have found out through numerous studies is that many prescription medications actually deplete nutrients. A good example is statin drugs. Statin drugs will deplete coenzyme Q10. And when you deplete enough of that coenzyme Q10, you can actually cause a heart attack. And
wow.
So there's probably about 50 different prescription medications that are the worst offenders. But if you go online and look at Life Extension magazine, they actually have an article that will tell you which prescription medications cause which nutritional loss. And so that's where you should actually get some good information on this topic, because actually prescription medications are dealt with as like toxins in the body. So the body reacts just as if it was a pesticide, and it has to break it down in the liver to make sure that it can be taken out of the body and be removed properly. And so that means your liver is going to be working extra hard to get rid of these prescription medications, which a lot of times not only don't work effectively, but they also cause very bad side effects. So you really have to work on your prescription medications and make sure they're safe and make sure that they're not depleting nutrients.
And it's also about being aware, isn't it? Being aware, because a lot of people mindlessly will take their prescription drugs without really understanding what it's doing to their bodies, right?
Yes, and if they go to the pharmacist, it's interesting that the pharmacist actually knows a lot more about this in many cases, especially if it's a pharmacist that actually does compounding.
Yes.
So they make a lot of different medicines. So the compounding pharmacists are actually pretty smart fellows and gals. And they will actually say to people, well, you have to be careful with this because it will deplete this nutrient or that nutrient. So that's a good source. But online now, there's as much information out there as you could possibly want. And so if you just Google nutritional depreciation by prescription meds, you'll get the list from 2 or 3 different places, including Life Extension. That's where you have to really take this into your own hands, because the doctor is not going to give you this information.
Yeah. And so really it's about us doing the work, isn't it? I mean, we really have to do the work to stay healthy.
Well, yes, and going back to the COVID thing, all the evidence points to the fact that people who have a chronic illness are the ones that are most vulnerable. So if you have high blood pressure, or even if you're just obese or you don't eat properly, then you're at more risk of the COVID than if you have a perfectly healthy diet and take certain supplements. Then your risk is much lower, and you're probably going to end up getting the COVID, but maybe with no symptoms and no side effects.
Right.
And so this is where nutrition really comes into play with this COVID.
And you also write, could COVID-19 be the final chapter in the perfect healthcare storm? Could you talk about that?
Yeah, because we've been pushed to the edge now. And what we're finally learning is that there are certain nutrients that not only are good for us in the long term from the standpoint of viruses and diseases, they're actually super nutrients like vitamin C and vitamin D. These are the ones that can protect against the COVID. And now we've got lots of doctors using vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc and even some herbs like olive leaf extract as a treatment modality because we don't have very good prescription medications for the COVID. And so they're getting better results from treating patients with vitamin C, D, and zinc than they are from any of the medications that are out there. And so this is really something